Okay, a very good afternoon to everyone. This is Professor Bharti Sungar here from Department of Management Studies, STM College of Engineering and Technology. So today's topic of discussion is data collection methods. So welcome to the session, all of you. So the main objectives or what we are going to discuss out in this chapter is what are the various methods of collecting data and how you can prepare that data so that it can be analyzed using some statistical tools or techniques later. So we are going to discuss major two categories of data collection methods here. One is primary data and second one is secondary data. So these are the major two methods how you can collect data for your research. Then there are various scales, measurement scales, which are being used to design your questionnaires and all. So we are going to discuss about those different kinds of scales in the coming sessions. And lastly, once you collect that data, how you have to prepare that data so that it can be analyzed using some statistical tools. So there is a systematic process for it. So that also we are going to study in this particular chapter. So today's topic of discussion starts with data collection methods here. So we all have studied research. We all know what is sampling. So a sample is something from where you collect that data. And there are many ways of collecting data here. So this data is something which will help you to uh, generalize a statement on a particular sample. So let us say youth of India. Okay, so if you are conducting a survey on youth especially, so you cannot consider the whole population of India. So what you do, you normally try to select a sample through a systematic way, and you conduct a survey on them, and you collect that data, analyze that data, and later you will say that even though the sample size, let us say the population is around 50 crores. Okay, so the youth population is 50 crores. You may not be able to conduct a survey for all of them. So you may take into consideration around 3,000, 4,000 from different places of India. So with that, even 5,000 population, sample also, you can generalize that statement to all the youth of India to a certain extent. But errors, that percentage of error in terms of generalizing will always be there, but still you can do it to a certain extent. But when you are selecting that sample, you should be very careful because that should represent the population. Okay, so when you are selecting the youth, means youth should be representing the whole population there. They should not be totally different from the population. The nature or the characteristics of that sample should be almost similar to the whole population of the country, youth population of the country there. So from this particular source, whatever data you are going to collect, the same data you are going to use it, analyze it, and then come to some conclusion. So here is where data collection comes into picture. So many methods are there here. Most common method is the questionnaire method, which almost all the researchers, most 95% of the researchers use this questionnaire method of collecting data here. So like this, we have interview method, we have observation methods, we have varieties of methods which we are going to discuss in this chapter. So we have two categories here. One is the primary data and the second is the secondary data. Primary data is something wherein a researcher collects a fresh data, and it is a first time data. It is a original data collected by the researcher himself. He is not dependent upon any other data here to come to some conclusion here. Let us say you yourself are doing an research. Okay, if you only design a questionnaire, you only go to the samples and collect the question responses from the samples or the respondents here, that becomes an example of a primary data. If it is an observation you are doing, let us say you are observing the buying behavior of customers in more outlet or Reliance outlet. So that means it is a primary data because it is a first hand data being collected by you as a researcher only. No other person's data you are going to use here. So that kind of a data which is collected by you, which is fresh, first time, original in nature, that kind of data we call it as primary data. Then we have secondary data on the other hand. Normally it is collected by some other person, but it has passed through varieties of statistical processes. They have collected that data, they have analyzed the data, they have proved their point, and they have concluded something. They have written some findings on that data. So that kind of data, you use it for your research or your decision making, means that kind of data is called as a secondary data, right? It is basically not collected by you, it is collected by somebody else here. That is secondary data. So today's topic of discussion are primary data collection methods. So what are these varieties of primary data collection methods here? One is observation method, second is interview method, third is the most common questionnaire method, and these are the most commonest which are being used by researchers. But other than these, companies also use other methods of collecting data, like warranty cards. They ask you to fill the warranty cards and get that data. So by doing so, the companies will come to know when what is the warranty periods of the products they have sold. Okay, then distributor audits can be conducted so that they can understand how much stock is existing regarding the products they are selling to the retailers. Pantry audits are conducted because they need to check out what is the stock available in the uh, sales at the sales points. Okay, then there are consumer panels wherein some people can be called invited to for a panel discussion. Okay, so a group of people will be sitting in the middle, and the observers or the researchers will be sitting out in the outside circle, and they will be observing what these consumers are going to discuss, and they are going to listen and note down the points. So those are consumer panels. Then you can also use mechanical devices like cameras or sound recorders. Okay, then we have projective techniques. Projective techniques are something where you give, let us take an example. You give a picture to a person, and you ask him to give his opinion regarding the picture. So whatever opinion he gives, that itself is a primary data, because you are directly collecting it from the respondent here. So projective techniques are something where you use pictorial images, you show those pictorial images to the respondents and get back their opinions regarding them. Ink blot test is one more example of projective technique. In ink blot test, what we do is we pour some ink on the paper, and we fold that paper. So on both the sides of the paper, a design is created. So that kind of designs are given to the respondents here, and they are supposed to give opinions or tell stories regarding that particular picture. This is again an example of a projective technique. Then we have in-depth interviews also. It's again a part of interview method only here. Then we have content analysis. So what they do is they ask you to write an essay or some content related to a particular topic. Let us say like experience of buying a shampoo. Okay, so you have to write a small essay on that, and you have to just submit it to the researcher here. So what the researcher will do is he will analyze that content, what you have written in your essay. So that is a method of content analysis. So we are going to look into major these three, especially these observation method, interview method, and questionnaire method in this particular session today. Okay. So what is this observation method? Okay. So what is this observation method? So just by the word itself, you can understand what it is. To uh, collect the data related to behaviors of the people, observation method can be utilized. So the best way to collect information related to the behavioral changes of the people, the most suitable method to collect the data is the observation method. In a way, here we can observe all the things around us, but this sort of method is not a scientific observation method. So we also can observe everything around us, but ultimately that cannot be called as a observation method or a scientific observation method. Scientific observation method is something where you use a systematic method to collect data through observation. So the researcher, what he is supposed to do is he is supposed to use a systematic method, plan accordingly, observe the respondent, but at the same time record those observations. Whatever you have observed, you have to record it in a systematic manner. So the recording can be done through a camera, recording can be done through a noting down the points in a piece of paper, right? So there are many methods wherein you can record, but the researcher has to systematically put it in a particular method, because later you have to analyze that data and come to some conclusion. So that is the reason, if it is not collected systematically through a planned process, it cannot be called as a scientific observation data. Under this observation method, the information is sought by the way of investigators' own direct observation without asking from the respondent. So here, just like interviews or questionnaires, nobody is going to ask any questions. Observation happens in two ways, either known or unknown. Sometimes what happens, you tell the respondents that we are going to observe you, but in some cases you don't tell them also you are going to observe them. So such kind of methods also can be used here. But uh, direct observation is like, without asking the respondent, you start observing them, because you get natural behavioral changes to be observed here. But if you inform them and then observe them, maybe there may be changes or variations in the behaviors, and the behaviors may not be so natural. Okay, so there is an example here in a study related to consumer behavior. What happened is, the investigator, instead of asking the brand of wristwatch used by the respondent, he may himself look at the watch. Okay, instead of telling about the asking about the brand, he may himself look at the watch and get to know what is the brand of the watch. So this is how you can go ahead with the observation method. The main objective of this observation method is the subjective biasness is eliminated. So here, if let us say the respondent does not like you, he may not give you accurate information. Okay, so that is subjective biasness. But in the same way, if he is being observed without he only knowing that you are observing him, you may get the proper information by him. Let us say he's shopping at Reliance Trends showroom. Okay, he is trying to buy some shirts. So how he reacts to the shirts there, what is his facial expressions, what are his body languages towards a particular category of shirts there, even when he looks into the price tags, how the facial expressions are. So all this can be done very accurately if the person is not being told that he is being observed. Suddenly if you tell them he's being observed, subjective biasness comes into picture here, because he will be more alert and he knows that somebody is observing him, so he may not react naturally here. So this kind of subjective biasness can be eliminated here, if at all observation method is being used and it is done very accurately here. Okay, then secondly, but one thing you have to keep in mind, subjective biasness can be eliminated only when the person is not informed here. If he is informed, subjective biasness may be there. Okay, only when he is not informed and he is being observed without his knowledge, then you can get a very natural reaction from him, or behavioral observations from him. The second main advantage here is the information which is obtained under this method relates to the current happenings, not the previous or past behaviors or future intentions. Okay, so what is right now happening in front of you, that is what you are going to record here using this observation technique. But whereas in some other cases, let us say in questionnaire method also or interview method also, what happens is, most of the times they may give responses based on the experiences of the past. Let us say, like, opinion about the sales mm, service. Okay, so they may give on the past experience. They have got the service in the company, that may not be good, but currently right now what is happening, so that information can be recorded very nicely using this observation method. Then the third, this method is independent of respondents' willingness to respond. and as such is relatively less demanding of active cooperation on the part of respondents, as happens to be the case in the interview or questionnaire method. So in interview or questionnaire method, what happens is the respondents normally, if they are not, their intention is not to give any response, they may say no, or they may deny to give the response. Okay, but here it is totally different scenario. There is nothing like willingness to respond here. You are just observing them without they knowing, or without if they are knowing, they may object you, but without they knowing, you are just observing and recording their behaviors, means nobody can deny uh, uh, to collect the data. So willingness to respond is not at all a question here, because anyhow you'll be observing them and collecting your own data. But in questionnaire method and interview method, that is the problem, where you have to take they will if they voluntarily give the data, well and good, but if they deny the data, that means the researcher is at the problem point. So those are some advantages there, but there are also limitations, that is disadvantages here. It is expensive because it is very time consuming, because let us say one respondent is there, only again one researcher or the person who is in charge of collecting data should go and observe the respondent here. If you want 1,000 people's observation, that means just imagine you have to appoint 1,000 people, or you have to appoint 100 people, so that one person can collect 10 people behavioral reactions. Okay, so it is highly time consuming, and at the same time it's highly expensive also, because of collecting the data. uh, you have to appoint many people to collect that data. Then, because say, the only one researcher cannot go and collect the data on his own by observing all the respondents. Secondly, the information provided by this data is very limited in nature, because whatever they are doing, you are just supposed to observe them. You cannot go and ask them, you cannot probe them to answer something. The observations what you have done may be totally wrong also sometimes. Okay, so they are thinking in a different manner and you are taking in it a different manner, so it may also happen. So that is the reason why there are some limitations in observation method. Thirdly, unforeseen factors may interfere here with the observational task. Let us say somebody comes and intervenes you, he talks to you. So at that time, your concentration on the respondent will be taken off, or else suddenly the person gets into the new section and you are unable to find him, right? So there are many reasons or issues which you may face. Sometimes if you are recording their behaviors through a camera, suddenly there is a breakdown in the camera, it may stop working. So such are the unforeseen factors also which may intervene this observational method. Sometimes the fact that some people are rarely accessible to the direct observation creates obstacle for this method to collect the data effectively. So sometimes it happens that people are whatever sample you wanted, such people may not be available for you people to collect the data. So these are some limitations you may find during observation method. So whenever a researcher is using this observation method to collect the data, what are the key things he or she has to keep in mind? So let us look into some of them. So first question is, he should be clear of what should be observed. Okay, so when you're doing some researcher, your objectives are nothing but they give you a clear picture as to what you are supposed to do in your whole research. Here also, when you are observing somebody, you should be clear of what you are going to observe. Let us say I'm a supervisor in an examination hall and you all students are attending the exams. What is my work? My work is to observe you for your cheatings, or I can say some copy or some illegal activities going on in the examination hall, right? My work is to observe you only on these areas, right? If you scratch your head, that is not the point of observation for me. That is not my objective to observe each and every behavior of yours, right? If you drink water also, I'm not supposed to observe such kind of things. My intention or my objective to be there in the classroom is basically whether you are copying or you are writing on your own. So that should be my objective. So a researcher should be very, very clear with his mind as to what should be observed, okay, in the respondent. Then how should the observation be recorded, whether it is through a camera, whether it is through a noting down in the book. So what kind of method you are going to use here? That should be again one more clear of. Then how the accuracy of the observation can be ensured here, right? So whether you yourself are going to do it, you are going to appoint somebody to do the observation. So you should be clear, because if you are appointing somebody, accuracy in observation may be a question mark, because uh, he or she whom you are appointing here may not give you true answers also sometimes. So you should assign the work to such a trustworthy people, so that your data analysis may not be affected in future. In the case of observation, is characterized by a careful definition of the units to be observed here. The style of recording and the observed information, the standardized conditions of the observation, and the selection of pertinent data of observation, and then the observation is called as a structured observation. So everything has to be systematically planned. Then only it can be called structured observation. And if it is a structured observation, then the data collected is good for data analysis. But if it is a unstructured information, coming to a conclusion based on that unstructured observation data, it is not possible, and it cannot be reliable also. Okay, so you have to have a proper planning for that. You should know from whom you are going to collect that data. You should ensure that the conditions for all the people, let us say consumer buying behavior, okay, for all the people the conditions are the same. Let us say if suddenly the AC, the centralized air conditioners system in the mall goes off, okay, on one day, right? You may not get the same observations in the customers whom you observed in the other day, where AC was working, air conditioner was working properly, right? So the people behavior in air conditioner system, the people behavior in non-air conditioner system is totally different here. So you should ensure the standardized condition for all the respondents here whom you are going to observe, and at the same time a structured way of recording the observations also. So if that is there, structured observation is one of the best observations to conduct the explorative study especially. Okay, so these are some things which you have to keep in mind. Then we have two categories of observation methods, just like structured and unstructured here, controlled and uncontrolled. If the observation takes place in a natural setting, it is termed as an uncontrolled observation. When an observation takes place according to some predetermined plans involving some experimental procedure, then it is called as a controlled observation. So tests and all which are done in labs and all, they are all controlled observations, right? So if you are like a consumer buying behavior study, if you are doing, means it is a uncontrolled observation here. So this observation studies, this method is particularly more suitable to deal with the subjects, especially who are not capable of giving some verbal reports of their feelings for one reason or the other. So in that case, if somebody is not ready to give their opinions, or they are not willing to give their opinions, but still you want to collect the data from them, means observation methods can be utilized. But as I said, observation studies method, you have to plan it very meticulously. It is not such a easy job, because collecting the data, organizing the data, analyzing it systematically, coming to a conclusion based on that analysis. So it is not so easy task when it is compared to interview or questionnaire methods here. Okay, so this is what is all about organization studies. Then coming to interviews. Okay, so this interview method, you already know about it. it is a kind of a face-to-face interaction or a oral kind of a stimuli where you ask responses from the respondents here. So as I told you, respondents are nothing but the people who are going to give you some data, primary data. Just to revive you, this is one more technique of primary data collection method. So this is more of a oral verbal responses you are going to get. You stimulate the respondents to give some data orally. So that method is called as a interview method. So normally interviews are collected through personal interviews or telephonic interviews. So today's topic of discussion, we are going to understand the personal interviews here. So a personal interview is a simple interview which is face to face and a person to person or person to persons. That means the interviewer is there and interviewee is there, or there may be interviewers, that is many number of people are sitting in a room to collect the data, and there is only one person who is going to face that interview. So the two situations can happen here. That is what is a personal interview here. So this sort of interview may be in the form of direct personal investigation or indirect oral investigation also. So in this personal interviews also, there is something called a structured and unstructured interview. Structured interview means, let us say there are 10 people whom you are going to conduct interviews. So for all of them, you are going to ask the same questions. Okay, but and you are going to probe them to answer those questions only. You are not going to deviate from those questions. But in unstructured interview, you have the freedom to deviate from the questions. Okay, you can let us say for one question you wanted more information, you can start digging more information there, asking questions. So that is allowed in unstructured interview. In the case of direct personal investigation, what happens is the interviewer has to collect the information personally from the sources. So he has to be on the spot and has to meet the people from whom the data has to be collected. So this, especially this method is more suitable where intensive research investigations are conducted. Okay, so that is what especially more meticulous, relevant, in-depth information if you want, these interviews can be conducted. So there are two types of interviews which you can actually take in, as I said, structured and unstructured. Such interviews actually, structured interviews actually involve a predetermined set of questions, and there is a systematic, highly standardized techniques of recording. Some companies go to an extent where they fix up a camera to record the whole interview. Some people have a checklist or a format with the predetermined questions, and they will start filling the answers in that format. So whatever you have answered, you have given your opinion, so the same information is just written down or noted down in that paper. So you have to ensure that there is a systematic standard data collection, data recording methodology here. So the interviewer in the structured interview follows a very strict, rigid process, no deviation from questions. Okay, so whatever was prescribed, the same questions are going to be asked. But in unstructured interviews, as I said, there is no systematic way here. There are no predetermined questions here, no standardized techniques of recording system, recording observations here. So if in case you need some supplementary or extra questions, of course you can go ahead with the situation. Sometimes it so happens that the interviewer may change the sequence of the questions also. Okay, so flexibility of course is there, but comparing the person to person responses becomes very, very difficult. And most of the times what happens, structured interview has a strict time frame, but in unstructured interview sometimes the you try to go with asking in-depth information, you may lose the hold on time itself. So it may be highly time consuming when you are using unstructured interviews. So the most preferred way of conducting interviews is the structured way of conducting interviews, because data analysis also becomes very easy later because of a systematic structured set of questions are being asked to the candidates or the respondents here. So that is about interviews, personal interviews. Let us look into some merits and demerits of the interview method here. Of course, the merits are questionnaire, there is always a limit, but here there is no limit. There is a chance that you can probe to get more and more information. Okay, interviewer by his own skill can overcome the resistance. Sometimes what happens, the respondents, no, they may say that I don't want to answer this question. So at that time, what happens is the interviewer with his own skills, he can convince them to answer the questions. There is always a greater flexibility here. You can always restructure the questions if the question is not being understood by the respondent. Okay, so you cannot stick on to the same language or the same question there. You can always ask it in an indirect manner so that the respondent easily understands it and answer the questions. Then we have another observation method can also be well applied here, because what happens is when he is giving verbal answers to various questions, how are his facial expressions, how his body language is, right? All these things can also be observed, because whether he is confident in answering or not, whether there is stammering or shivering while he is answering the questions or not. So these things can also be observed in the interview, because it is face to face. Then we have personal information can also be obtained very easily just by building some rapport with the respondent here. Sometimes what happens in questionnaire, some people will leave the questions empty. But here, if they don't answer the questions, you can always get back to them, convince them to answer the question, make them understand the question easily, and then non-response error, it is called as, okay, which we are going to study a little bit later. Non-response error, that means people don't answer few questions. So that error can be eliminated using this interview method, because it is face to face. You don't allow anybody to skip off any questions. But if you give a questionnaire, people will think on their own, and they will think that this questionnaire I don't want to answer, and he may leave the questions. They may leave the questions without answering. Then the interview can usually control which persons will answer the questions. Of course, the interviewer can always have a control over it. This is not possible in a mailed questionnaire approach. Okay, so sometimes sometimes even group discussions may also be held. Then the interviewer may catch the informant off guard, and thus may secure the more spontaneous reactions that would be the case if mailed questionnaire were being used. Sometimes what happens, suddenly when you ask questions, some spontaneous reactions come in on their faces. So such information can also be recorded immediately. But if you mail the questionnaire, or if you give the questionnaire to the people, they may not be able to give such kind of reactions. The language of the interview can be adopted depending upon the ability of the education of the person who is going to respond, because misinterpretations of the questions can be avoided here. Then the interviewer can collect the supplementary information also about the respondent's personal characteristics and the environment, which is often a great value in interpreting the results. So these are some few merits of different methods of collecting data here, especially the interview method here. So the next topic is on telephonic interview. So we'll stop for today.